everyone, this is the brand new Land Cruiser Prado, and this is honestly much more rougher than it was before. The brand new Land Cruiser Prado. Now, I'm very familiar with this platform because a very good friend of mine actually used to have the previous generation to this, because with that generation it was much more softer, much more, you know, of something like you wouldn't want to really take off-road and possibly beat around the bush. But with this one, it's much more rougher, it's much more boxier. It's like an 80s SUV, like how SUVs were supposed to be made. Over here you can see with the Toyota badge, they dished away the badging to make it more in your face by writing out Toyota, which makes it more rugged. And well, it just makes you feel like you are buying and you are looking at quite the car. So if you come along around here, you can clearly see that this is more of an off-road based SUV. The Land Cruiser has always been that. Over the previous generation, it was just way too soft, and I think this one just looks way more better. We have the truck mirrors orientating back to its heritage as an off-roading car. And another thing I do have to say is that they actually decided to ditch away the spare wheel that used to be put onto the boot. So now at least it folds up instead of opens like this, because it was much more heavier and it put the weight on the car a lot more. So now let's actually head inside, because we have to see what Toyota has changed on the interior.
Now we're inside the brand new Land Cruiser Prado, and there's a lot that's to be explained in terms of the interior. Now, the issue with most Toyotas for the longest time has been the interior. When it comes to quality, when it comes to infotainment systems, that's what we're gonna look at a lot right now. Starting off with the steering wheel, you have a lot of functionality still on the steering wheel. Real buttons, which I don't know, that earns a lot of brownie points, especially for me, because you look at infotainment systems from VW, even from Ferrari, you have these touch sensitive buttons, which no, they're just not good. They're not good, and for a lot of people they're deal breakers. So I love the fact that you have actual buttons here, and it's not touch sensitive buttons, and you still have some sort of functionality here, especially because this is a car that you want to grip with both your hands. You have a very big car. There's not a lot of power, but it's a very big car. And when you do get up to speed with this car, you're going to want to keep your hands on the wheel, 10 and 2. Another thing, while you're keeping your hands 10 and 2, you are going to be looking at this brand new digital gauge cluster. Now, the screen itself isn't actually very big. It only ends up out here. But you have these thick bezels on the sides. And inside those very thick bezels, you can see things like your fuel readout, the amount of water you still have left, and other warning lights and things that might come on as the car ages and everything and whatnot. Then you move over to the entire sort of infotainment cluster here and everything, and well, I'm just gonna show you. It does move quite a bit. Someone might be able to rip it off. And given the fact that this is a new car that costs over R1 million, that is a bit of a concern, at least on my part. I wouldn't want that to be the case, but it seems like every single car brand nowadays is just forgetting about interior quality. I don't know why. But in terms of interior quality, still though, there are some places where this car still earns brownie points, especially when it comes to the fact that you do have leather over here. It's sure, it's fake leather, whatnot, but it still feels nice and soft. Then you have all this functionality over here. Again, a lot of car brands won't give you this, especially at this price. You won't get it from Audi, you won't get it from Mercedes, you might not even get it from BMW. Remember, you are paying 1.3 million rand for this car, so you could cross shop with those brands. The same thing with Land Rover, you're not going to get it there. Another thing you won't get from Land Rover is this lovely gear selector over here. It's nice and grippy. You're gonna have that there. You also have these mode selectors, very nice, very chunky, and it's reassuring. You know when you're changing the modes. Another thing you're gonna get this lovely large storage space. You do get a bigger storage space in the Defender, but it is still pretty good. It's still pretty big. You are going to get smaller storage spaces from brands like Jeep and whatnot. Then you have your off-road controls over here with your high 4 and your low 4. Then you have your lock and differential, your traction control on and off, and obviously your parking brake over there. You got 2 cup holders over there. You have a wireless charger in there. There isn't much space. You have 3 other ports. You've got essentially what is 3 different charging ports, but also you can transfer some data over here for if you need like an aux or something like that. Especially since this is still a family car. This is also a very good passenger car though, which Matteo will talk about in the passenger seat.
As we are now in the passenger side of the new Prado, and just to start off by saying, this is the base model. So along with the base model, you do have some manually adjusted seats obviously, but if you do go up to the next trim level and then eventually to the first edition, which is more limited run, obviously, but it is the top of the range. You get electronic seats back to front, which is a big plus. But nonetheless, this being a base model is absolutely phenomenal. If you look at these really soft materials, just like Leche had said, it is fake leather, but it is good for the environment if you want that as well. So you can be out in the bush and you have the bush inside here. So it is perfect. All of this here is soft touch running along, even over here. And we were just discussing how the only two brands these days that don't have creaks and noises and bad interior quality is really Audi and Volvo, and BMW has stepped up a bit, but looking at the new X3's interior, it doesn't look like it's at the level where it needs to be. So these are actually very impressive inside. I mean, even over here, it's all soft touch. Now, if you were to run your hand here, this is plastic, but it is a nicer plastic than what you get in your 4 million rand Porsche Panamera. So there is no complaints from it. My two complaints on the car really is this glove box for one. It is quite small. I mean, you're not going to use a glove box. It's not like you can fit a deer's head in here or anything. You're going to carry that in the back after you go hunting in the bush, because that's where this thing's going to live. Otherwise, it's going to live on the mountains out there. My other big problem, other than the glove box with this car, is the infotainment system. Now, I must say, it is a lot better than Toyota's previous entertainment systems, but I'd like to compare it to almost a low-grade phone. As you can see here, when you're skipping between things, it is quite laggy. It's not quick in any way. I mean, it's still usable, but it's not quick. It's not easy to use, almost like the buttons on the steering wheel, the buttons that you have here. So I do wish there was more physical contact with the infotainment system, almost like Audi has. Audi, you can control it from down here or from the screens, and that is just a lot easier to use. But it's not too much of an issue regarding or concerning that this car isn't going to be used much for its infotainment system. It is going to be used off-road, in the bushes. You're going to the Kruger, you're going rock climbing over the hills, and this can do that while hosting 7 people inside it. And that is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I really like how easy these are to use. They're very mechanical, simple. I like the look of this. It's almost like got a turbine look. Obviously, you've got a nice grip handle, which I must say, you don't necessarily need this. This car's actually super easy to get in and out of. Even without the step piece there, I'm able to get in there fine, and I'm about the average height in South Africa here. So that is a big plus. Regarding like your Defenders or even bigger cars from BMW, they are a lot more difficult to get in and out of, which I find this to be really good at doing. Then last thing, coming to these seats, you can see these are really plush, they're thick, they're cooled, they're really easy, and they are super comfortable. You feel like you're in a more premium car than you used to. Especially noting again that this is the base model. So that is superb. Up here though, you do have some German integrates. If you look here, you have touch sensitive lights. I personally don't mind them too much. You can get close to them and they switch off, so you don't have to physically touch them. But Letu does have a bit of an issue with it, as he's concerned that when you're in certain parts, or you're driving quickly or need to get to them, a physical button would have been better, which I can agree with. It's not the biggest of issues, because I've seen worse where you physically have to hold it for a bit before the light switches on, but it isn't a deal breaker at all.
Since this is a 7-seater SUV, we have to see how practical it is. So now let's open up the boot. And as you can see here, you have quite a lot of trunk space, well, boot space. You can fit a lot of things in here, you can fit a lot of bags. And well, let's actually test out how long it'll take me to boot up the 3rd row and also get in. Right there. Also right there. Then you have to come over here, find the latch, which is located right over here. And then step inside. And yeah, it's actually pretty comfortable in the back as well. Let me just put this down. And guys, just to add, that took 19 seconds from back to front to complete. Now, I will say for leg space, it is really small because I'm about 5'8". Anyone over 6 foot will struggle because there's not really much of space back here for people who are really tall, maybe for small children, small adults. But yeah, it's actually pretty fine back here. And it also doesn't lack any sort of comfort back here. You still have cup holders on each side, and you also have USB Type-C charging ports over there that you can store for your phones and also charge up tablets or laptops. Let me actually hand it over to Mateo.
Okay guys, so when you do come to the back end while the back 2 seats are up, you do lose a bit of your practicality. As you can see, the boot does get a lot smaller, but that is not too much of an issue as generally speaking, most people aren't going to be carrying more than 5 people in the car. And if you compare this to majority, if not every other 7-seater, this is the case with it. So let's head over to a little surprise for you guys now.
So we're riding inside the new Prado, and first impressions, it pulls quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, definitely.
It pulls quite well, and also it's a lot more comfortable than you would have immediately thought. So I'll just go back to Eugene Mateo.
So recently, obviously, we were in the Range Rover, the Sport SVR, and so that is our closest comparable car that we've reviewed in terms of driving. But I have been in the previous generation Prado as well as Eugene, and we've been in Ranges and Hiluxes and as such. And I must say, in the rear of this car, it actually is somehow more comfortable. Just a quick look though, there is an older Prado in front of us now, which is quite cool to see. You're gonna see those all over the road, and even more so, these new Prados are gonna be everywhere. They are being sought after by everyone in the country at the moment, and we understand why. I mean, the car is phenomenal in terms of comfortability and practicality. And just like Leto had said, it actually pulls really strong, especially compared to the previous generation. It's not up in power in any sort of big way that it would make a big difference, but the car feels smoother and easier to get going, which makes the car more comfortable. And it does have some key features like lane detection and lane assist and all of those nice little things that you need on a car the size of an aeroplane. So let's see if Eugene has anything to say from the rear.
So I'll say, from the last time I was in one of these cars, it didn't feel as refined as this. You know, the gearbox really was old school. It felt like it was just, it just didn't feel as put together as this. It's really smooth. I can feel the torque. The torque really does make this car move, especially if you want to be towing a lot of heavy items as well. But yeah, much of it is very comfortable. It still is a Toyota, so you can feel the build quality of this will just last for probably until we all die. But yeah, it's really good. And I also just want to give a shout out to Toyota in Randburg for giving us this amazing opportunity. So let's just continue driving, and we'll talk about the engine when we get back.
But before we get on that, there's one little con that I do have, and that's the fact that the visibility can be a little bit of an issue if you're looking out from the back. So if you're one of those people that like reversing and looking behind you, you will encounter an issue when it comes to the C pillar, which is your pillar right at the back, right at the back. It's a very, very thick pillar, so it is going to be a challenge in terms of looking out there. But, you know, that's a given with a car this big and a car that needs this much structural rigidity.
And
So-
that's what I was talking about with the torque. You can really feel that this thing just pulls really hard. Although it doesn't have power, but
The
you can
torque
feel
is
that
good,
torque.
and it is comfortable. It is smooth at doing it. It doesn't hit your head back, but it gets going really well. You know that it is going well. Guys, we are at the front end of the new Prado, and coming to the engine, it is the 2.8 GDE Toyota motor, pushing 150 kilowatts and 500 Newton meters. And I must say, after driving the vehicle, or being driven in the vehicle, sorry, it is really strong. That torque really gets it going a lot smoother than the previous generation. Now, for this generation, and even the previous Prado towards the end, Toyota has cut out their V6 diesel motors, which could be an issue to some people, but honestly speaking, if you look at fuel economy and long distance and towing, having a smaller capacity 4-cylinder diesel with a lot of torque is very beneficial. So, what do I think about this car? What is my verdict on this car? I'd like to just start off by saying, this is the base of the Prado. You can get the first edition with the rounder lights, but this still doesn't look bad. The first edition does get a different differential, a different suspension, a much bigger infotainment system, more electronics. But for a base model car, this is possibly the best value for money you can get on the market, especially for a 4x4 and an off-roading, not too flashy vehicle. I mean, your biggest competitor for this will be the Land Rover Defender, which has almost gone from a rugged off-road car to a sports from Range Rover off-road. And so if you don't want something too flashy, but you want something that gets the job done well, this is definitely the car for you, and must be high up on your list if you're considering anything along the lines of that. So honestly speaking, I absolutely love this vehicle. From the looks to the design to even the drive and how comfortable the car is, it is just a phenomenal job from Toyota. So let's head to the conclusion.
So now that we reached the end of this wonderful review, what do we think? Compared to the previous generation, it is a much bigger upgrade. You get a lot more tech, and it is just so much more better looking because it's so much more rougher, so much more rugged, and while it's Toyota, it's built tough. So thanks again to Toyota Honeydew here in Randburg. Make sure you give them a follow, obviously, Toyota Halfway. And obviously, if you want to see more reviews like this, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.